Anyway, so welcome everybody. It is 2 o'clock, so we're going to get started. This is PYF Women Talk, and we like to talk about what we know you're thinking about. So if you're here live, thank you for taking time out in the middle of your day. And if you are watching the recording, thank you as well. Our goal is to educate, entertain, inform, and empower. And we do that by talking to women who I like to call PYF women. So PYF women are women who do these things. So no pressure, y'all, but you demonstrate all of these characteristics. And the women in this room do it, as well as I'm sure other women that we will get on the show later. So PYF women possess and demonstrate genuine kindness. They talk up women who are not in the room. They hold safe and supportive space for other women. They model being a work in progress, embody the brilliance of being less than perfect, confidently declare they are amazing and far from perfect, and support and cheer up other women, cheer on other women. And the cool thing about this is by being present and having this presence, women like the women in this room and these women, all of these women, elevate the spaces they inhabit, and they intentionally work to make the world a better place, all while occasionally leaving the house in mismatched shoes, which I know I've done. Anybody else done it? Totally done it. Yep. Walk around, all of a sudden you look down and you're like halfway through the day and your shoes don't match, but you're still making the world a better place, and that's what really counts. So today, what we are going to do is talk about volunteering. So the cool thing is, I didn't think about this, but I kind of did. But when we all started talking, I realized that, and maybe we talked about it a little bit, but the reason that I know the three of you, maybe through other circumstances, but our connections have come through, or our connections are growing and building through doing volunteer work. And so I think that's kind of cool, right? Because as we, as women grow, age, level up, whatever it is, relationships are interesting in terms of trying to come by and maintain and experience, because you think about it, when you're a kid, you get your relationship through school, right? Or when you're little, whoever your parents have you hang out with, you go to school, you make your friends, you go to maybe college, make friends, or you go to work and you make friends. And so all of your friendships and your relationships tend to come through external sources that are kind of not necessarily put upon you, but they're a part of your life. And then we're friends with our kids' moms, or, we do all of the things there. And then all of a sudden, as our kids are growing, we look around one day and we're like, wait, what is there? What are we doing and how has this happened? And so I know for me, some of my closest friendships are through the volunteer work that I've done and am doing. So what I thought we would do today, and I just dropped this on, for anybody watching, I just dropped this on these ladies about 3 minutes ago, and actually Cindy hasn't even heard it yet. We are going to play Volunteer 20 Questions. And so I went to ChatGPT, because I'm trying to be very modern and AI, and asked ChatGPT, what are some of the most common things people want to know about volunteering? And so ChatGPT gave me about 100 questions, and I pulled 20 of them. And those are the questions that I'm going to ask these ladies today. And then we are going to discuss. So no one person is on the spot unless we decide to change it up and put you on the spot. But when the questions come up, we will have a conversation around them and see where things go. Now, the coolest thing that just happened for me is all my screens just went black. And so right now I'm just talking because I don't even know if I'm still in the room. So I think I am, though. You guys can still see me, right?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So while I was going to do this anyway, but this seems like the perfect time. How about if you all take a moment, introduce yourselves, and talk about, or just briefly mention, organizations that you currently volunteer with, or that you have volunteered with, or that you want to volunteer with. Emily, you want to get us started?
Sure.
30 seconds, 3 minutes, whatever you want.
I'll go for the 30-second model. My name is Emily Marshall. I work for the Vail School District, and all of the volunteering that I currently do kind of revolves around my job. So the two major organizations I work with are the Arizona Technology and Education Association and COSIN. And so both of those really revolve around how technology is used in K-12 education and how to support teachers and students in a better way.
That was well done. Dana, can you top that? Efficiency, and she's good, huh? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dana Jackson, and I work with CDW. Been an account manager for over 10 years. I would start by saying that I'm an empty nester, so I have just a little bit more time to volunteer than maybe other people do. And this is a no judgment zone or judgment-free zone. So I will pick a couple of the things that I'm volunteering with. I'm really excited. I've been volunteering with a community garden. I recently moved here to North Carolina. And also I volunteer with various tech organizations that focus on women in technology. That's something I feel really passionate about.
Love it. That was really good. Cindy, can I put you on the spot? Talk about some of the
Sure.
volunteering and talk about your business.
So I don't have anything to do with the schools or technology. So my best volunteering stuff was when my kids were younger, I always helped in their classroom. And then over the years, my sister and I have been big supporters of Susan G. Komen breast cancer. So we've done some of their breast cancer walks over the years. And then we've also volunteered at the events as support staff. So that's always been a lot of fun because we can travel. Some people you see over and over again over the years, and some people you see over and over again that same 3-day period. And then other volunteering is I've started running when I was 58 years old. And so I volunteer for some of those running events if I don't think I'm strong enough to actually join the event. And that is a lot of fun too. So that's pretty much my experience for volunteering.
I love it. And that's actually how Cindy and I met and became friends, was through volunteering together, but also through I decided to be a runner for like 5 minutes. And now I just support the idea that other people really like to run, because you should, like, a dog has to be chasing me to get me to run. But the fastest I ever ran was a night 5K with Cindy, where I was positive I was going to be eaten by a bear or something. And so now I know if I ever want to run quickly, it needs to be at night, because man, can I move then. So my name is Laura Boone. I'm with Structured Shifts, and I'm a former classroom educator and tech director, all sorts of good stuff. But I primarily volunteer through ASTE, the Arizona Technology and Education Association, and COSN. I also do some volunteer work with Televerde, who is an organization based in Arizona that works with women who are coming from incarceration, coming out of incarceration. So, environments, I need their elevators pitch a little bit better, but get to do some really cool work there to work with reducing recidivism. And I've gotten to do some work with mock interviews and doing some education and stuff like that. So it's really exciting, and I'm looking to grow in the work that I do there. Got into volunteering when I started working with a program called All Star Kids back in like the early 2000s. And that's actually what got me into education, because I was working as a volunteer literacy tutor with at-risk kids. And then I ended up taking on a site and then sucking everybody I know into joining and being a tutor. And my parents would bring treats and snacks. It was fantastic. So anyway, so ever since then, been in education and now heavily in ed tech. So here we go. Ready for some questions? I'm going to share the screen again because I think I turned it off. But you should be seeing the images of you ladies, and then now you're seeing PYF women, right?
Yes.
All right. And now we are going to see the question. So those of you who are watching now or later, can always think to yourself about how you would answer these questions or take them to a friend to ask her later. But the way we're going to do this is we are going to use a random number picker. And the first one, we're going to go easy, and we're going to leave this wide open to anybody to answer. So this isn't a pick on anybody one, but let's go and see what they want us to talk about first. All right, number one, and this is a really good one, actually. How do you balance your volunteering commitments with your other responsibilities?
I think everybody is so busy. That's a good question. It's It is. And I think sometimes when you're choosing what you're going to be able to volunteer for, you have to know what the time frame is that you need to put in, and what hours and what days of the week and things like that. So that's difficult to answer that question.
Yeah, I think it's when I agree. When you are deciding that you want to volunteer, it's important to kind of look at realistically, how much time do you actually have to devote to this? And then to match that up with other criteria, of course, with the organization needs. So really important to kind of get that done off the top.
I agree. Emily, what do you think? I'm dropping the share for a sec.
Yeah, I would say I don't balance it very well. But
Right?
right now it's just like, yeah. But I think the benefit is because it aligns with my work and it like brings in some aspects of things that I'm passionate about that I don't necessarily do at work. They fit really well together. So, you know, we worked this past Sunday, or Saturday, I think it was last Saturday that we were working together. And, you know, it was fun because it was something I was really excited about. And so it didn't feel like off balance, I guess. And so I guess I would just say finding things that you're actually really passionate about and like constantly reevaluating that and dropping things if you decide, you know, this isn't what's bringing me joy anymore, or adding some value to our lives as well as whatever we're volunteering for.
Or not detracting or taking from other areas, right? Like, I know volunteering it can, and we run into this a lot. We talk about this a lot is within organizations, there'll be like that key core group of people that do 90% of the work, right? So I think we've all been there, and you end up, it's really hard to say no to things, I know sometimes we talk about you hit that limit of what you can do as an organization, and your limiting factor is the hours available by volunteers. And so not being able to do some of the work that you'd like to do, I think is one of the harder things, because it's really easy. And I've seen people do it, some people in this room right now, who are like, oh, you know what? I'll just make it work. I'll make it work. I'll make it happen. And that doesn't always serve us. And then I think it goes to exactly what Emily just said, like, then not what you're saying, but I'm building on it, is we sometimes start to lose our joy around it. Right. And then it becomes a chore instead of a joy, which I think it's sometimes okay for volunteer work to feel like a chore, but we don't want that to be the majority of it. So I don't think I balance my time very well either. You know, does anyone have any additional advice on that? Dana, do you have a strong ability to set strong boundaries and balance your time well?
Sometimes, and sometimes I don't. I recently volunteered for a film festival here in Charlotte, and I thought, I love movies, and as I mentioned before, I recently moved here, so I'm looking for that social connection. And they sent me a link so that I could watch the movies because I'm on the jury, and I realized there were 52 movies for me to watch. That is not what I thought this would be like. Now, some of those were short, 10, 15 minutes, and some of them were 2 hour long. So that's definitely an example of understanding the commitment before you agree to volunteer. And then, like we've all mentioned before, just being able to set that boundary when it's not something that you can commit to.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you're in, sometimes you're like that, like, what do? You're like, this didn't work out at all like I wanted, you know? I've had it happen too, where we've gone to volunteer for things, and maybe this will come up in one of the other questions, where once you get there, what you were thinking you were doing isn't at all what you're doing. And then it's suddenly like, oh, well, I don't really want to do this. But then we try to recognize if we're there for ourselves or if we're there for somebody else, or, but I've been in that space before too, where, yeah, the whole balance thing is a little bit of a challenge. So, all right, I am going to spin us again. Maybe I have to keep my spinner. I'm trying to get the spinner on the screen so that I'm being legit and not just like making things up for y'all. I know there's trust. All right, we got 17. What's our question? How do you think, oh, this is going deep fast.
Mhm.
All right, let's go big. How do you think, I actually almost want to come back to this one, but should we go in? Should we just dive into it?
Mhm.
Right.
All right.
Let's do it.
How do we think volunteering can benefit society as a whole? Stop the share. Who's going to tag this one? How do we think it benefits society as a whole?
I think this is actually a really timely question, as like, you know, all the stuff you're doing with structured shifts and cohorts and things like that, and just realizing how disconnected everybody is. And I think you, Laura, started by saying, you know, we don't make friends on the playground or at school anymore. So like, how do as adults do we find that connection? And this is like a really good way to do that, because you can reach out to volunteer for things you're really interested in and look for those connections that, you know, start a little bit shallow just because you're working together, but could, you know, build much deeper. And I think that's like something people are looking for and aren't sure how to find it. So it's an easy on-ramp to finding those connections.
Mhm.
That was a really good answer.
I totally agree with that. And I also think that anytime, I know from my personal experience, when I volunteer, I think I get as much out of it, if not more, than the organization and the other people that I'm helping. So it makes me feel good to volunteer. And if everybody could just feel a little bit better and help at the same time, I think it's a wonderful experience for all involved.
And it gives you an opportunity to look at the mission of the organization and kind of match that with what's important to you, what you value. And then you have an opportunity to kind of amplify what you value in society.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of, one of the things I didn't mention now that Delilah has joined us is one of the things that I did volunteering before I got into ed tech was I volunteered with animal rescue quite a bit. And I have 3 out of 4 of my dogs are actually foster fails. So I think that one of the benefits, and this is a grouchy foster fail, but I think that's one of the benefits as well for society as a whole is that when we do things we love, it ties into what you're saying. But I think the empathy is the word that I'm thinking of, but the idea that I'm going to go kind of woo-woo, like energetically raising the empathy level in the world, right? That caring for others, that understanding of the needs of others, the taking some time away from what's important, you know, what we're doing to give. I think just the more that we do that, I think it ties into what, you know, Cindy was saying too, is the more people can see others doing that, not in a, you know, let me shine a light on what I'm doing way, just that we do it very naturally, right? Um, I think it brings other people to be interested in doing more of the same in their way, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be exactly like, you know, you don't have to bring dogs into your house and have them live with you and then take over your world and boss you around. But it could be that we just recognize that we can support those who are more vulnerable than us,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know if I just was a greeting card or if I said anything of, you know, inherent of value, but I think there is that elevation of the experience for even people who don't volunteer. Um, and then I also think that, I don't know, when I was a classroom teacher, I know there'd be days where you're just super grouchy or whatever. And as soon as I get into the classroom and start teaching, I forgot about what was going on with me. And by the end of a class, I'd feel better. And so I think that ties back to what y'all were saying too, that um, getting outside of yourself sometimes helps you recognize um, that you're not everything. You know, the world doesn't necessarily revolve around us. But I also sometimes feel frustrated because I feel like there's so much need out there that you don't know where to put your own boundaries. Does anybody run into that? Like in a bigger way? And if so, do you have a solution? That's not one of the choices. What I just threw in there. Girls talking girls. Nothing?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of things that you could volunteer for and that maybe you'd want to volunteer for. I think for me, just because I have kids and a full-time job and so many things, it's a little bit easier to like not have boundaries, but have boundaries at the same time. You know what I mean? Because like you only have so much time. But I totally understand what you're saying. Like there's so many things I would love to help with and love to be able to impact.
Yeah. And I'm empty nest too. So there
Mhm.
aren't those, I think you're right. I think there's that difference that there's not as many external responsibilities placed on us after, once the kids leave or whatever happens or things are a little bit different, you have more seemingly free time. But isn't that supposed to be our benefit for, getting through the first 40 whatever years of life, right? We're supposed to be able to like go eat bonbons. I don't know if that'll happen. So all right, we're going back in. Are you guys ready for another question? Let's see what we got. We have number 14. We're going with all the serious questions first. All right. This one I was anticipating talking about more towards the end, but who wants to jump in and what advice would you give someone who wants to make a difference through volunteering but doesn't know where to start?
I'll start. I think you want to do something that, like you said earlier, Emily, gives you joy. You see a need, and there's so many places that you could spend your time and your efforts, but find the things that are closer to your heart, and then you're going to meet more like-minded people also, and you're going to just mushroom that experience because you're doing something that you like. You're meeting other people that have the same interest as you. It's just find those organizations, find out where they need help, or if they do take volunteers, or if they can lead you to somebody else that they know of that can use more help.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing is to, I think, again, take that realistic view on how much time you have, what's aligned with what you value. Do you want to volunteer professional organizations, personal things? So kind of understanding what your why is, right? And then move on from there. There are tons of websites that kind of get that information together. So if you're looking to volunteer, you can find them. But you have to know yourself first, right?
Yeah. I know, I'm trying to think of how I got involved. I know I got involved with AST by, I think, attending an event and maybe talking to somebody. I can't remember how I initially first got involved, but I think for a lot of us it's through like a friend,
Mm.
right? Or through somebody we know or through a colleague. So I can't remember how I got involved with AST. That was years ago. I've been involved for like 6 or 7 years, I think. I don't know, but I know that the only reason I'm involved with COSIN is because of Emily. So it's Emily's fault or benefit or whatever, but I know Emily was studying for the CEDAL and or thinking about studying for the CEDAL and mentioned it to me, and it was when I was with CDW and or right before, I think it was when I was with CDW, but if Emily hadn't mentioned that, I know that that would not be something, maybe I'd be involved, but that was my gateway, was through Emily. So, and then I can think of also when I volunteered with running events, that's been Cindy's fault through Cindy. So, and we have had and you have good times. You have good times and not so good times, but like some of the most fun that I've had has been through these volunteering experiences. And then even Dana, we've talked about, like I just started with the I Am Remarkable, right? You've been volunteering with them for a while. And so the kind of mean things that I'm doing have mostly come through other people or through people I know. And so, Emily, what about you? I know you do some stuff outside of AST and COSIN too, haven't you? Or talk about AST COSIN, like what's mostly been your entry point?
Yeah, I have in the past lately, you know, the last 5-6 years, it's been pretty much all work related. So AST, COSIN, things like that. With AST, I was voluntold. My boss was like, hey, come to this board meeting. And I was like, okay. And then like, it felt like a week later, I was a board member and I'm like, I don't know how this happened. But I don't know, this is a little bit off topic, but not really. I think it's connected. I think the really great thing about volunteering as opposed to work is most people are not good about setting boundaries. And especially at work, it's a lot harder. So I feel like it's a really good place to like start working on that and just thinking like what really speaks to me, what's really important to me, and putting your time where it like brings you joy or where it fulfills you in some way. Because it's a good, like once you start saying no, or once you start setting the boundaries, or doing things because they're important to you, it's easier to transfer into other aspects of your life. So it's a really good place to like find those connections, find an organization you care about, you know, their mission aligns with your belief system, and then it can transfer into the other areas of your life. So I like, even over, I think even since we met to talk about this meeting, I've been talking to people and saying, go find something to volunteer for, because like those connections are so important and they're so missing. And I'm like, just go to Google and say volunteer opportunities at Tucson. You know, scroll through the list, find things, try them, and then if you don't like them, stop doing them, find something else. So it's a fun way to do those things, and like, you know, I guess enrich your life in a way that you can't do without volunteering.
It's really cool, the idea that you can kind of practice some skill sets. Like you said, like, you know, grow like having boundaries or deciding yes or no, or even deciding something's not for you. That's kind of cool, because I think there's like, I've heard people say countless times, like, oh, I could never foster. I could never foster an animal because I couldn't handle it when they leave, or it would, you know, blah, 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 or I'd keep them all and stuff like that. And I always want to say that I always want to push back on that, because while it's true, it's very hard. Like giving up the first couple is very, very hard when you're fostering them, but that isn't the whole thing. And so to me, I think it's cool to try things and then see what happens. Like I've volunteered for races where there's roles at volunteer at, you know, running events that I'll never do again, ever on this planet, on this earth. Like you would light me on fire before I would do it. But there's others that I would do in a heartbeat. And so over time, I've learned very much how to have boundaries around that, Emily. You're right. Because I didn't have boundaries anywhere. And that was probably one of the first places that I learned to. Ooh, that was good. Thanks for sharing that.
And you learn how to be a team player, you learn how to work with others, creative problem solving, all those kinds of things come into play as well.
Yeah, it is a great learning environment. I kept telling people I became the president of ASTI, and I'm like, everyone that knows me, I'm like the biggest introvert. And so I use that as an opportunity. Like, I know this is important, so I'm going to step outside my comfort zone and push myself. And I'm still introverted, but I'm definitely better as far as, you know, those kinds of leadership skills and the things that you learn doing that kind of job.
That's absolutely true, because I've seen it in you over the past couple years. Like, you know, I mean, if you don't mind me sharing, like the kind of behind the scenes, but when Emily first took on being the presidency for ASTI, Emily's like the quiet one you got to watch out for, because she impact, and Cindy's the same way too. Like they quietly change things quietly. And I don't know how to say it differently, but you know, they're not behind the scenes. They're always there. They're always very present, but they make shit happen without making a fuss about it. And I think that's really, really cool. And so when Emily was going to do her first speech, or her first, you know, address as president of ASTI, like, I think you were a little bit nervous about that. Remember that? You were getting up in front of everybody, and like, you could see her like almost, like her hand almost shaking as she was speaking. And today, she'll get up and talk in front of anybody. Like, and it really was very intentional on her part to overcome that. And, you know, I think she said something about being an introvert, but I'm better now. Introverts are the bomb. Like, we are fantastic, right? And so.
Oh, wait a second. Are we for introverts?
We are for.
Oh my gosh. Talking about volunteering and get it out of our comfort zone. Wow.
A room full of introverts. And I know I hear all the time, like, you couldn't possibly be an introvert, but if you know me, you know I'm a total introvert. Like when my I don't know if you guys, like, does your introvert battery just die suddenly in the middle of like a public event? And you're like, I can't leave, but I don't want to talk to anybody. You know, and I have actually left. It's, what's it called? The escape exit. There's a phrase for it. So, all right. Anybody else more on, I don't even remember what question we were asking. I don't remember. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to share again. And I'm going to, I could probably just be trusted that I'm doing the random number generator, but all right, ready? Aha, number 4. Can you share a memorable experience or accomplishment from your volunteer work? Can you share a memorable experience or accomplishment from your volunteer work? I have so many.
I'll start. Okay. So Laura and I were volunteering for this event out at Lake Pleasant, and the wild burros are in the area. And so we've got our little stop sign. We're stopping the cars when the runners are coming through on the path to run through. And here come these burros. And I guess they thought we were going to feed them or something. So they come right down up close, personal, in your face. We're like, get a picture, get a picture. Well, no, but stand on the other side of that block, cement something, so they don't just jump out and attack you. But that was a lot of fun. That was unexpected. And the people had no idea to tell us where we were supposed to go. So we just kind of found a spot and said, okay, this looks good. This is where we'll stop.
It looks like people need traffic here. Yeah. Traffic support here, like no high-res bus, no number count, nothing. No, I don't even think we had a stop sign, or maybe we had a stop sign. I don't remember, but yeah, out of nowhere, these burros just start like wandering, and they're like taller than us. They're not like, it's not like a petting zoo. These like animals were coming out of the desert, and I didn't know. I'm much less brave than Cindy, and so Cindy's being very kind. I was on the other side of the car with the door open, like ready to get in the car and like leave. I didn't know what, because I wasn't sure they were going to attack us, eat us. I didn't know, but Cindy was like, let's take a picture. I'm like, okay. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. How about I had one where I was volunteering a race and Cindy was running the race with a friend, and I could not find the spot that I was supposed to go to. So that was an interesting one. Literally never found the spot, was kind of getting feedback, advice, ideas. I'm somewhat directionally challenged or very directionally challenged. I was 2 hours into my shift before I gave up and realized I was never going to find the spot. Like, just never found it. It was out on a trail somewhere and somebody was sitting there by themselves without support because I sure wasn't there. So that was one of my experiences. So that was a memorable experience, not an accomplishment. What else? Anybody got anything to counter my never showing up?
What was it? It was a memorable accomplishment.
Memorable experience or accomplishment from volunteer work.
It's very different, but I think the thing that comes to mind for me is just like how quickly things can happen and like the universe aligns. And I think this with, and a lot of people watching may not know COSIN and all that stuff, but just like it started with, I think it was 2 years ago, 2 people presenting at a conference saying, hey, there's this organization, there's this thing called the CETL certification. Those 2 people just like talking about it sparked my interest and Laura's interest. And as he became a COSIN chapter the following year, to us getting ready to have 25 new CETLs in Arizona. And a lot of that's acronyms and things that you may not understand or know about, but it's just like the span of time was so short and things happen so quickly and it's making such a difference. I think that's really inspiring to keep going because sometimes change feels like it's just so stinking slow. But then sometimes things like that happen and changes happen really quickly just because things align and people, are on board and excited and making things happen. So through that work, things can change really quickly and it's cool to see that.
I don't know. I'm trying to think through a memorable experience. And I mean, I've got stuff in my 20s where I was volunteering at a cultural festival. It was a 3-day festival. I'm sure there are probably some memories back, way back in the recesses of my mind. But I think and of course, the Women in Technology conferences that I've assisted with are really meaningful to me professionally and personally. But I think the most memorable is going to be one of the most recent volunteer efforts I've had. So I was recently on the funding review panel for the United Way. So all of these organizations, nonprofit organizations that come in requesting funding, I was on the committee that reviewed the applications and then interviewed them. And I would say it's memorable because you see so many folks out here that are doing really good things. And I wanted to just stroke checks. It wasn't my money. So I just wanted to
Right.
give to everybody because they just sound so earnest. And then kind of understanding the constraints and looking at some of that other criteria that we had in play kind of curtailed that a little bit, but it was memorable because it was my first time actually conducting interviews. Last year, I just reviewed applications. This year, I saw these people face to face.
That is really, and how do you say no, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Be
Yeah.
like, be like Oprah, like, you get a car, you get a car, you get all the money.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought I had an experience like I said with Televerde when I was doing some mock interviews with women who are, coming out of situations and they're going into the workforce and back into the workforce, whatever. And I was so impressed by the women, when I was interviewing them. And I know we were supposed to follow a very specific format, and with each one of them, it just ended up, we do the interview, but we'd have these conversations, and I was just fascinated by the skill set and the talent and the level of professionalism. And I think there's the potential for kind of coming into situations with a perspective and
Mhm.
then being really fascinated by the reality of a situation, like how amazing, these women were in these interviews. And so I think that was really memorable experience, and I can't wait to do it again. Because and the feedback that you get, I think there's always something really nice about getting positive feedback when you have given some of your time.
Mhm.
I think that's really neat. Um, and that alone feels like that too feels like an accomplishment,
Mhm.
is that you've contributed to, in some small way, you know make somebody else's life a little better, right, or a little different. And that might not be it, but like I've got a dog on my lap right now as a result of volunteer work. And there's so many other things that I can think of too. So um I'm gonna jump in and see, did you know we only have 20 minutes left already, or like 15 minutes? So I'm going to, are you seeing we are going to do number 15? Didn't we do this one already? How do you think your volunteer work has made a difference? No, we didn't. All right, I'm going to give this to one person. And then if you decide you don't want to answer this, you get a dare. Fair? All right. So, Dana, how do you think your volunteer work has made a difference in the community or an organization? And I think you just kind of answered that. So now you get to, with United Way, so now you get to go to a different, maybe with your community
Yeah.
garden work or something else.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's popping into my mind is the work that I did with Richmond, Virginia Tech Council. They had a Women in Technology event. I was on the committee for that event for several years. Pushing out of my comfort zone, they actually asked me to interview a panel of folks. And I really don't like public speaking. So that was me kind
Oh, you don't?
of stretching myself, and I'm a member of the community, but also um, when I came back down, we were having lunch. One of the younger gals came up to me and she was like, "How can I volunteer?" And so I was like, "Okay, let's connect via LinkedIn." We connected. I shared information with her. And then the next year, I saw that she was actually on the committee as well. So seeing her progress in her career through that opportunity, yeah, I think it's meaningful.
That's really cool. I
Mhm.
love that. Anybody else had anything like that?
Sometimes you see it and sometimes you don't. That
Yeah.
was just one of those rare situations where it kind of was an immediate payback there. But
Mhm.
yeah.
I love that. I know one of the coolest things that ever happened to me was when and we volunteered a lot of different ways, right? Like we speak, and I was thinking public speaking, I'm surprised because of your role and your work and everything, and you come across as so outgoing. I would have just assumed that you love public speaking, but not too many, right? But no, not everybody. So I was speaking at a conference, and this was before Emily and I were close, but we volunteer, right? We volunteer our time. And about 2 months later, and this reminds me of it, I got a random email from Emily just commenting on the presentation that I'd given, and that there was some downstream impact in a positive way. And so I thought that was really cool. And then also when I can't find any right now, but when I speak, a lot of times I give out little frogs, and it's, don't boil your frog. And it's the idea of keeping your stress level down and keeping things, I usually here he is. Yeah, there's my frog. So, just little green frogs. And whenever I sometimes run into somebody and they'll like pull their frog out of their pocket, it's that, kind of like you said, the impact or the effect. You know who carries a frog with Dana is Brian Krause.
Oh,
Like when he travels, like I saw him somewhere and he pulled a frog out of his pocket.
oh,
And I was like, how cool is that? So, I think we do have more of an impact than we realize. So apparently you just need to tag people with like some sort of frog or something. So and tell them they have to carry it around with them, or a sticker, you know? So I think and I know that one of the things I want to ask about, and I'm going to see if this question comes up before I ask it, because I know there's a couple of stories that y'all haven't shared yet. And so let's see if question number 13, what inspired you to choose the particular volunteer organization or cause that you volunteer with? And I'm going to drop that one on Cindy. And you can pick anything you've ever done in your life.
Okay, well, like I said, I did a lot of volunteering with the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Walk, and it's 60 miles that you walk in 3 days, and you have to raise a couple $1,000s every time. And the reason I did it is because my sister asked me if I wanted to join her, and she had done it for the first time the year before. So I think I've done it 10 years, not consecutive years, but you'd have to train, you have to do stuff. And then a couple of the years we did the walk, and then we also went to a different site because they had multiple sites during the summer, and we volunteered. We drove the vans and picked up people that needed to take a ride back into camp, or just a little break. So that was a lot of fun. I did it for my sister, but then again, I did it for myself. I did it for all those women. I don't know any of us that is immune from knowing somebody that has breast cancer or has had breast cancer. And that was just a way for me to help myself, help my sister, and give back to the community as a whole.
It's interesting when you get to raise money in order to participate in events. I think there's some kind of interesting but also and cool things about that, because I know that gives an opportunity for other people to feel like they're contributing at the same time. Like being able to donate to you walking is kind of a cool thing that other people get to kind of live vicariously through it. And you've talked about the adventures that you've had about, side trips. It is incredibly hard work. And you've also had some fun adventures in like shops and bars and some little side trips. I said the first bar that they walked into, I'd never get out of it. So you wouldn't know, you wouldn't, if we're walking 60 miles and I stop, you're not going to be able to pick me back up, because I'm just going to decide to I actually did one time call an Uber from a 5K, like got halfway through a 5K and we decided we didn't want to do it anymore. So we called an Uber.
That's funny.
Never made it to the end. Anyway, Cindy, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, we went to Boston one year and did the 3-day walk in Boston. So we got to go to the Cheers, and have a beer there. And we went in a day early so that we could take the tour without having to be on our feet too much. So we got to learn a lot about the area, and it's just fun to go do different things. We saw where the finish line was for the Boston Marathon. We went by, you just get to see landmarks and places that I wouldn't normally go visit, just because I'm busy, and that's it's just a good excuse to get out and about and and when you're doing something for like the Susan G. Komen, and also for what you're doing in your education, is you're raising that awareness for everybody that you talk to about what are you doing? How are you doing? Why are you wearing pink? You know, so it's a way to volunteer, but also raise awareness for that same cause. And it's good. It's a win-win.
All right, next we are going to put Emily on the spot this time, and we're going to see what question Emily is going to get. And if she chooses not to answer it, she gets a dare. We already did that one. I guess it'll answer the same. I wanted an elimination picker. Number 11. Okay.
It's the
What's the
craziest.
craziest request you've received from someone while volunteering? Have you gotten anything weird?
Is I can't think of anything an answer, or is that a non-answer?
That's horrible non-answer. That's a dare. Take a dare, or take a challenge question.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean, I volunteered at a zoo when I lived in Texas and had to like learn how to hold, spiders and snakes and stuff to take them to school. So it's kind of crazy. Does that count?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like being asked to hold tarantulas is crazy, especially if you don't like them to start with.
No. So you actually held them like in your hand?
Yeah, we had to pick up these animals or whatever from the zoo and take them to like schools and
No.
libraries and stuff like that.
No.
Yeah, I wanted to volunteer with like the elephants or whatever, and they're like, start with the snakes. And so I did, but then I moved away before we got to get to like the bigger, more fun animals.
Okay, so if my entry point to get to elephants is snakes and spiders, you're not going to see me. Absolutely not. Like any spider that has hair, I'm itching right now just even thinking about it. No, that's not okay at all. Yeah, I think of when we volunteer running races, right? And when they're running, they get so like, their extremities, like remember how they can't you can't fill your own water bottle and that kind of thing, right? And you get very specific requests for mixes. Like if you're doing the aid station or like the food station or anything, it would almost be like taking orders because they've been, they knew they'd come back around that loop, like, or something like that in the next hour. And they'd be like, can I get a mix of 1/3 Gatorade, 1/3 ice, 1/3, like it was very specific, and some salt. And if you could have a pickle ready for me, that'd be great. And, I mean, it took me back to my waitressing days. And so I could do that and I loved it. But yeah, you'd see people like trying to use their hands and their hands just kind of stop working after, right? I mean, Cindy, you've run like 50Ks and stuff, like after a certain number of miles, like I think your hands just stop working. So those are fair requests, but surprising. Yeah. And then, working with animals, you get all sorts of interesting requests from people about the animals. Like, could you do X, Y, Z? I lost my share. Hold on. Am I still sharing with you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am. I meant to stop. Okay, cool. Let's go back to the random picker again and see what we can do to Dana on this question. Number 4, we already did. Can you share a memorable? So we're going to do that. We're going to shoot again for number 16. Did we do this one? What advice would you give?
Yeah, read it.
I think we did.
So
I thought we did. Let's skip that one. And then I'm just going to start picking.
oh wow.
Apparently the random number picker really likes the same question. How about number 3? What is the most unexpected skill you've learned? I think we've talked about this already, but.
Wow. Gosh. The most unexpected. I don't know that there's been an unexpected. I'm sure there has. It's just not coming to me right now.
I know, right?
I think the public speaking piece was something I didn't walk into wanting to develop. And yeah, so I think that there's a lot of opportunity when you volunteer to kind of build skills around things that you could use in other areas of your life. but I can't think of. Yeah, I can't think of.
It's kind of a common thread that's been through this conversation for the past like 45 minutes is that the things that we do while we're volunteering, we find we're extrapolating and taking into the other areas of our lives, which I think is kind of cool.
And
Hadn't
sometimes you don't
necessarily-
want to do that, right? So I am at the community garden. I went in, I met with the executive director, and she asked me what I did, and I told her account management, sales, and she was like, "Oh, you can be the director of our funding department, or you can be the chairperson for that." And I was like, She's like, "Yeah. And what we really need is for someone to work on the raffles for this end of the year event that we're going to have, raffle items. You could go around to local businesses and ask for items." And while I'm all wanting to get that social connection here locally, I, number one, don't necessarily want to do what I do in my day job, in my volunteer effort. And then also, I don't want the first time that I meet some of these business leaders to be, "Can I have something?" So yes, there are times, right, where people will hear or feel that you are gifted in a specific area. And then you have to kind of set that boundary and say, no, thank you.
That's not easy, right? I know we talked about this when we all met last time where you eyeball other people to bring them in because of a skill set they have. And I know one of the things like Emily, we've talked about is, on the board and with AST, like identifying our gaps and then finding people that have the skills that meet those needs. And that's not necessarily what we want to be doing as people who are volunteering. You're right, because, we want to achieve more balance. Or maybe the reason we're volunteering isn't because we want to do more of what we already do. That's a great point.
So I think the setting boundaries is very important. And we did talk about that a little bit. Also going out of your comfort zone is, that's how we grow. We go outside of our comfort zone, but we also need to know that we have the choice to say, no, that's not something I'm interested in. Could I maybe do this instead? Because in your time and your energy. And I think it's also important to realize that when you ask other people to do things for you or with you, that it might not be in their wheelhouse or something that they're not necessarily looking forward to doing. So we need to be gracious and give them an out if it's not going to be a good fit for them.
It's beautifully stated, because you're right. I think sometimes people, like we talked about fostering, like people are afraid to dip their toe in because you're afraid once you get in, like, especially if there's friends involved, like, what if you don't like it? Or what if because I know and I could be accused of this, and I think it's true. I just assume everybody wants to be a part of every volunteer thing that I ever do. Right. And I'm like, hey, come on, you're going to join me. And when I did the tutoring thing, I remember I stuck, and had a bunch of people that were volunteering, and I just assumed everybody was going to volunteer next year. And they were friends. And then finally one of them's like, you know what? I don't really want to. And I was like, what? What do you mean you don't want to? We have cookies every week. It's great. And the kids, they're like, yeah, no, we don't want to. But I was shocked. So yeah, having a gracious way for people to extricate themselves if they find that's not their best fit in a glorious, lovely way is a good point. Absolutely. So, and making sure that and I know we talked about this, we on the other end aren't putting people in a position where even though we might lose half our volunteers if we even explore that idea, because there's a lot of voluntold in the world. Or getting sucked in. So, I am going to ask as we start to wrap up, because we've got only 6 minutes left and we have answered most of the questions. We haven't answered what's the most embarrassing thing you've actually absolutely accidentally said or done? Anybody got a party foul story that when they've been volunteering? I don't know if I do. If I don't know.
I can't think of one.
Can't think of
No.
one either.
I usually put my foot in it somehow or another. So it's just on, par with the course. You just got to smile and keep on going.
I remember when we volunteered Ironman,
Mhm.
Cindy, and we were handing out Gatorade. And I do remember saying to somebody about the next day about how sore my arm was. And they were like, "Really? Oh, I feel so sorry for you." Like, and I think it was somebody who, so my arm was sore.
Right.
I said my dart muscles, like the same muscles that you use for throwing darts, are the same muscles you use to hold out cups of Gatorade for hours at a time. But they're like, "Yeah, so that was hard for you, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, it really was." And then I realized it was Iron Man. So, in the last 5 minutes, what else could we share? We've shared, kind of randomly here and there. I think if you are looking to volunteer, you can dip your toe in or you can dive all the way in. So we have said some of the pieces of advice that y'all have given are to Google organizations that you're interested in or that match the interests that you have. And I think Dana made the really good point that if they don't have to match up to the skill sets you have in terms of what you do for a living, what you do professionally. Your resume doesn't necessarily have to be a part of this. You could try it in try to volunteer and do things. Somebody said to try out new things and to try out new areas. And I think like, I don't run, but I volunteer with running organizations every once in a while, even though I don't have those skills. Having solid boundaries around our time is advice that y'all have also given. Know how much time you can give, but also know that you can be flexible about that. Maybe you go in initially thinking that you can do 5 hours a week. And then when 5 hours a week becomes real, you're like, yeah, that can't do it. And then it's okay to back out or to back off to a time that's realistic for you. What else have you talked about that I'm not mentioning in the summarization of our time together?
I think another thing to remember is that there are in-person volunteer events, but there are also virtual events that you can, and that kind of opens up an opportunity for you to volunteer on your time. So reading those applications for that funding review panel, that was something I could do on my time. The interviews were the other part that I had to kind of work my schedule around. But yeah, understanding that there are various ways for you to volunteer.
Like, great point. Because a lot of what we do, most of what I do volunteering, I feel is virtual. Come to think. I didn't think about that.
I think it's important to just, if you're really interested in volunteering, just do it. Just start small. It doesn't matter. It makes you feel better. It helps the organization. You'll meet some people and you might decide that's great. I'm going to do that again next year. Or I'm going to keep going on, or maybe I'm going to try this instead. But just even a little bit at a time is a start, and it's very valuable.
Yeah.
What's the biggest, Emily, were you going to say something? And then I'm going to ask a question.
Oh, I was just gonna, one last thought I had when you were talking about, Google organizations that exist. You can also like start organizations where they don't exist. I have a friend whose son was diagnosed with a rare disease, and he started not only a foundation to raise awareness about that disease, but also started a local rare disease day celebration in Tucson, which is an international event, but he started one in Tucson. And so that's really cool too, seeing a need in your community where you can like fill that need, and making things happen out of nothing is really cool too.
Okay, that's really impressive. Is that what you did the website for? You did his website,
That's
right?
one of them.
For the event, one of the events.
Mhm.
That's really cool. And then what is, last question, what is the best, like what have you gotten for each of you or any of you? What's your biggest like takeaway from, what do you get out of volunteering? Like what's the best thing that you get out of it? Because you're giving away your time, you're not making any money, you're not, getting any sort of like literal compensation. So what do you get out of it?
I think there are a lot of things that I get out of it, but one interesting thing is as an introvert, when I'm volunteering in professional organizations, it's an authentic way for me to network, and it's low pressure, and to kind of build those common threads that kind of strengthen and lay the foundation for strong relationships. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I also
love
like
that,
the
Dana, because
they're like twofers, right? So Emily's talked about helping volunteering in these run organizations, which is great because that helps the community, but also you're moving. And so you're getting that movement as well.
Love it.
I was going to say I love what Dana said, just because I will, like, if I have to do small talk, like I'm running away, but like talk about something impactful that's important to me, and it's like all day long I can have a conversation. So that's a fun way to
I
like
love
get
that because
outside of.
I think I have literally seen you run away from small talk
I will.
conversations. Like you can see dust coming off her feet. Like she's like, I'm done. I'm out. Yeah.
And I've met a lot of really interesting people, and
Yeah.
not necessarily that I've kept those relationships going. It's just that there are a lot of really good people out there in the world. And sometimes we hear more about the bad things and not all the good things that people are capable and more than happy to do.
Yeah. And it's the like reason, season, lifetime, right? Like there are people that come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And so those relationships, even if they're not permanent, there's a reason for them, and it's really good things. And we are at time. And so I'm gonna say the best thing that I've gotten out of volunteering are truly some of my closest friendships are as a result of volunteering. You know, people I may have met through other circumstances, but that spirit and that feeling and desire of wanting to do for others or, you know, make the world a better place. That's like the like-minded common spirit that I know those are the friends that I want in my life and that I feel really, really lucky to have and all of that good stuff. So, all right. So that's our time. And I really, really appreciate I'm stopping our recording. But before I do that, I want to say thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. PYF and for making the world a better place.